The tragedy unfolded just yesterday. No one deserved such a fate. The quiet town, on a September night in 2009, was shattered by horror. A family of 6 faced a nightmare. They had settled in for what should have been a peaceful evening. The children were tucked into bed and good nights exchanged. Yet that night's darkness would swallow them whole. A man with deadly intent forced his way inside, unleashing a brutal massacre. The carnage was so savage, so merciless, it etched itself into infamy as the bloodbath in BEASON. Even hardened investigators were left rattled by the scene they confronted. Soon, the full horror will become clear. Our story takes place in BEASON, a tiny town nestled about 200 miles from Chicago, deep in Illinois. With fewer than 200 residents, BEASON feels like a forgotten pocket of farmland and rolling hills. At the heart of this tale are 2 families, the G family and the Constant family. Both had called BEASON home since the late 1990s. Now we focus on Rick G. Rick was known for his relentless work ethic and refusal to quit. Early on, he worked alongside his stepfather, Pudge, in a construction company based in nearby Lincoln, Illinois, the closest town with schools, Walmart, restaurants, and even a small airport. Lincoln was where residents of smaller towns went to get things done. Rick's mother, Judy, and stepfather Pudge both lived there as well. Rick hustled, taking on construction jobs wherever possible. Every hard-earned dollar was saved with a single goal, to build a better life for himself and his daughter, Nicole G. Eventually, his efforts bore fruit, allowing him to purchase land on BEASON's outskirts. Rather than remain tied to his stepfather's company, Rick launched his own business, G Construction. He bought a ranch-style home complete with a 2-car detached garage, an above-ground pool, and enough farmland to raise chickens and other animals. But running a business demanded extra income, so Rick chose to rent out a room. That's when Ruth Constant entered his life, moving in with her 2 young children, 3-year-old Justina and 1-year-old Dylan Constant. Ruth began strictly as a tenant, but it wasn't long before a deeper connection formed. Ruth's warm-hearted nature and lively humor matched Rick's steady presence. Their bond grew stronger, and soon Ruth discovered she was pregnant. By 1997, Rick, age 34, and Ruth, 27, were married. Not long after, they welcomed a baby boy named Austin, and their home buzzed with new life. A year later, baby girl Jessica G joined the family, filling their hearts with hope. But that joy was fleeting. Jessica was born with a severe neurological condition, leaving her with disabilities that demanded constant care. BEASON lacked the facilities to meet her needs, and the family couldn't afford private care. Reluctantly, Jessica was moved 50 miles away to Peoria, where she became a temporary ward of the state. It was later reported she died well before the massacre. Returning to the family, Dylan displayed troubling behavior. As his relatives recalled, Dylan was a bundle of energy, often acting out as children do. His teachers frequently sent home reports of his behavior. Rick and Ruth struggled to find help for him. After seeking therapy, Dylan was diagnosed with ADHD. Though treatment brought some relief, it failed to make a significant impact. Yet, there was a ray of light when Rick's daughter Nicole turned 18. Nicole began dating Christopher Harris, a 21-year-old local man. Their relationship deepened quickly, culminating in marriage. They moved just a minute away from Rick's home. Soon, Nicole discovered she was pregnant. This made Rick and Ruth grandparents for the first time. With the birth of little Elisa Harris, joy filled their lives. Nicole and Chris often left Elisa with Ruth while they worked. In late July 2009, Nicole and Chris welcomed their second child. To outsiders, they seemed the perfect family, with a new baby soon expected to crawl. That September, Rick's stepfather Pudge and his grandson Adam offered to help Nicole by installing new carpet in her home. He saw the blood and a knife lying at the bottom of the steps. When Adam stepped inside and flipped on the lights, a scene unfolded that would haunt him forever. In the hallway lay Rick, face down in a thick pool of blood, frozen in shock. Fearful to proceed, Adam turned and ran back outside to Pudge, urging him to call 911. Yet he struggled to explain the horror, having witnessed only this grim sight. When police arrived, they were confronted by a blood pool spanning 2 to 3 feet wide. As they ventured deeper into the home, they saw Rick's head was shattered, his body severely battered. At first, the cause of death was unclear, but the brutality suggested a shotgun was used. The officers had yet to check the other rooms. Moving down the hallway, they noticed walls dented and smashed, signs of a violent struggle. Then they discovered the second victim. In the adjoining bathroom, 11-year-old Austin, dressed only in underwear, lay face down on the blood-soaked tile floor. The G family had been blindsided by evil that night. They were likely preparing for bed, unaware of the nightmare closing in. The officers moved cautiously, unsure if the killer still lurked within. They pressed forward down that blood-drenched hallway. Every step revealed more of the horror left behind. The peaceful night had been shattered, forever marking BEASON with a stain of violence and loss. The investigators moved past Dylan Constant's lifeless form, steeling themselves as they approached the bedroom of 16-year-old Justina Constant. What awaited them inside was far more gruesome than anything previously encountered, a scene saturated with blood, smeared across every surface. Blood had soaked deep into the mattress where Justina lay face down, her head dangling over the bed's edge. Below, a chilling puddle of brain matter told a brutal story. She bore the most devastating injuries of any family member, and just when the team thought the horror had peaked, they braced for the unimaginable. Exiting Justina's room, they inspected an adjacent space and initially saw no victims. But then, in the shadowed depths of a closet, they discovered a small 3-year-old girl's body crumpled on the floor. Blood pooled around her fragile frame, her skin torn back above the right ear. The sight shattered even the seasoned officer's resolve. Trained to face brutality, nothing could have prepared them for the grotesque reality of such a young child beaten to death. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught a corporal's eye. It was the child, alive, but barely. A paramedic swooped in, cradling her like an infant, racing toward the ambulance. Nicole G., the only other child in the home, was quickly ushered aboard as well. The ambulance tore through the night toward the nearest hospital. But upon arrival, medical staff sounded alarms as Tabitha's vital signs deteriorated. Amid the chaos, Chris Harris, Nicole's husband, arrived at the G family residence, summoned urgently from work. When police confirmed the devastating truth, the family had been slaughtered, Chris faced a wave of hopelessness. Yet, in that darkness, a fragile beacon emerged. Tabitha had survived. Relief swept over those present. Despite the nightmare, Tabitha's survival offered a sliver of hope for justice. But for Chris, this news sparked a nervous urgency. Without hesitation, he jumped into his truck, speeding toward the trauma center where Tabitha fought for her life. Meanwhile, Logan County Sheriff's Corporal Michael Block and Illinois State Trooper Paul Hennessy combed through the crime scene, searching for clues to unravel the massacre inside the G family home. Among the grim evidence, they discovered a bloody handprint smeared across the bathroom vanity where Austin G. had been slain, alongside a fresh shoe print outside, matching a distinctive K-Swiss tennis shoe. Officers canvassed the tight-knit community, pursuing every tip. One neighbor recalled spotting a silver pickup truck with exhaust pipes jutting up behind the cab, passing near the time of the murders. Despite these leads, the investigation hit a frustrating dead end. That night, forensic pathologist Dr. John Ralston meticulously examined the victims, capturing every wound in photographs. The injuries were so severe and numerous it was nearly impossible to catalog them all. One fact loomed clear. The family had been brutally bludgeoned, not shot. Initially, investigators suspected a shotgun. Instead, each victim had been mercilessly beaten. Rick G., the patriarch, endured 39 impact wounds, 13 concentrated on his skull. Ruth Constant suffered 28 blows, her skull crushed beyond recognition. Their 11-year-old son, Austin's skull, was caved in, bearing at least 21 strikes. Signs indicated Austin had been slammed against hard surfaces, his feet stomped upon in a merciless assault. 14-year-old Dylan Constant suffered over 100 wounds, with 52 direct strikes. Justina Constant bore at least 15 identifiable injuries, missing the upper portion of her skull entirely. Meanwhile, Tabitha was locked in a desperate battle to survive, with multiple skull fractures and severe brain swelling. The swelling left her unable to speak or see, her face distorted beyond recognition. Yet amid the grim prognosis, there was a faint glimmer. Tabitha could still move her arm, signaling a flicker of strength within the devastation. Doctors made the harrowing decision to remove small fragments of her skull, hoping to relieve pressure and give her brain a chance to heal. It was a race against time, as the medical team fought to save her life. Throughout her recovery, Nicole G. remained steadfast by Tabitha's side. At the hospital, the atmosphere was thick with tension, police officers standing vigilant behind the young survivor's bedside. They knew Tabitha was the sole witness to the carnage and feared the perpetrator might strike again. This made guarding her a matter of paramount importance. Nicole cooperated fully, offering every detail she could about her family and the horrific night. Meanwhile, Chris Harris became a pillar of support for Nicole, spending long hours by her side, navigating the chaos together. Yet beneath this united front lay a complicated truth. Chris and Nicole's relationship had been turbulent, marked by breakups and reunions. They had only reconciled months earlier, in 2009. Days dragged on, and investigators found themselves at a frustrating impasse. Though leads such as the suspicious vehicle and shoe prints surfaced, no suspects emerged. The G family had no known enemies. On the contrary, the family was beloved in their community, respected for their generosity and kindness. Neighbors painted a portrait of a wealthy, loving family shattered by senseless violence. In response, police urged the neighborhood to secure their homes and remain vigilant. They stressed the need for routine precautions, locking doors at night, monitoring children's whereabouts, and watching out for one another. The day was soaked in sorrow. Amidst the overwhelming grief, Tabitha clung to life in the hospital. The community mourned deeply, yet a shadow of fear lingered. The killer remained at large, unpredictable and dangerous. Then, fate intervened unexpectedly with a crucial break at the very hospital where Tabitha fought to survive. After his shift guarding Tabitha, a vigilant officer found himself sharing an elevator with Christopher Harris, who had just exited her room. A sharp glance caught the officer's attention. Christopher wore K-Swiss sneakers with a distinctive, aggressive tread. This tread matched the shoe print discovered outside the crime scene. The officer swiftly alerted detectives, prompting Christopher Harris to be summoned for questioning. Yet the shoe print comparison revealed a troubling detail. The sneakers were a half-size too large. Sensing inconsistencies, detectives pressed on. They gathered Christopher Harris's fingerprints and palm prints, dispatching them to the crime lab for meticulous analysis. In a desperate bid to prove his innocence, his brother Jason Harris stepped forward with an alibi, insisting they had been together far from Bismarck, the location of the murders. Meanwhile, Nicole G. was consumed by fury. Nicole declared that Chris had stood by them through every trial, and now he was gone too. She was not alone in her defense. Chris's stepmother, Debbie Harris, also spoke to the media, affirming the family's belief in his innocence. In a tearful phone call from jail, Chris confided in his father, Ed. Debbie recounted that Chris was stunned by his arrest and deeply fearful for his family's safety, telling Ed he was scared because the real killers were still free. Chris swore his innocence, insisting he did not commit the murders. During booking, police photographed his entire body. While no injuries were visible, they noted a large blister on the palm of his right hand. In a chilling coincidence, a tire iron was discovered near a creek by Jason Harris's house, where investigators continued seeking clues. On October 2nd, when authorities seized Chris's truck, they found it registered to Jennifer Ernest, Jason's girlfriend and mother of his children. Both Jennifer and her mother, Sarah Duncan, had initially provided alibis for Chris and Jason on the night of the murders. However, as the investigation deepened, those alibis unraveled, leading to their arrest for obstruction of justice. The police dismantled the alibis partly because Chris's palm print was found at the crime scene. Adding to the mounting pressure, Lori Cole, an armed security guard, stepped forward. She recalled that around 11:35 p.m. on the night of the murders, Chris and Jason knocked on her door, inviting her to party. Lori, living near the G family home, declined, saying she needed to rest for work. She noticed a Ford Ranger parked outside, resembling the one Chris and Jason had been seen driving earlier. Though she told them to leave, their uneasy demeanor suggested they had been partying and were reluctant to call it a night. Another woman, Christy Moore, came forward during the probe. She revealed she and Chris had an on-again, off-again relationship. Chris had called her late that Sunday night, but she was occupied with her children and declined to meet. Christy agreed to see him after her kids went to school the next morning. Chris arrived at her Clinton home just 15 minutes from Bismarck, around 12 hours after the murders. They spent the night together, and Christy described Chris as acting completely normal afterward. She even took selfies of them in bed, capturing moments of kisses and flirtatious smiles. In these photos, Chris appeared relaxed and uninjured. Christy noted nothing seemed unusual, except that she hadn't seen him in 2 months, likely due to his recent fatherhood with Nicole. From the outset, Chris insisted on his innocence. denying any role in the murders. Yet, when confronted with fingerprint evidence, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right and secured legal counsel. Chris seemed content to let the judicial process unfold, but the tide shifted sharply as pressure mounted on his brother Jason. Initially charged with obstruction, Jason soon faced 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 of attempted murder, the same charges as Chris. Facing a life sentence, Jason confronted a grim choice: remain silent and support his brother, or break his silence to save himself. Survival instinct prevailed, and Jason began to speak. His chilling account described a night fueled by drugs and alcohol. He and Chris had been partying hard, drinking heavily and snorting cocaine. Eventually, they sought female companionship to sustain their reckless night. They first reached out to ex-girlfriends, who both refused. What should have ended there continued, as Chris's heightened libido and drugs drove the brothers to pursue women elsewhere. This desperate search tragically brought them to the G family's home. Jason recalled they had first attempted to visit Lori Cole, the armed security guard nearby. Jason waited in the truck while Chris approached Lori's door, only to be turned away. What followed became murky. Jason offered 13 conflicting versions of what happened next, but all shared one horrifying constant. Chris Harris was responsible for the massacre of the G family. Jason claimed Chris had planned to visit the G residence intending to have sex with Justina Constant, the 16-year-old daughter of the G family and Chris's sister-in-law. Chris apparently convinced himself that Justina had been flirting with him. Whether this was consensual or not remains unclear, but Jason insisted Chris believed she was interested. Jason said he stayed in the truck as Chris approached the house. Some accounts claimed Chris was armed with a tire iron. Others said he was unarmed. One version described Rick G., the father, answering the door. After a brief exchange, tension escalated, prompting Chris to retrieve the tire iron from the truck. Jason then heard screams and thumping noises from inside the home, signaling the horrifying onset of a brutal massacre. Jason remained in the pickup truck throughout, listening to the chaos within. He heard loud thumps and screams, and witnessed Dylan Constant escape by jumping from a bedroom window. In a desperate bid for safety, Dylan dashed to the front door before retreating back inside. Moments later, chaos erupted as Dylan burst out of the house, bleeding profusely, with Christopher Harris close behind. Jason Harris witnessed Christopher strike Dylan 5 or 6 times with a tire iron before retreating into the house once more. Against all odds, Dylan found the strength to rise and re-enter the house. Minutes later, Christopher emerged and climbed into a pickup truck. As he drove down the dirt road, he casually discarded his shoes and the tire iron out the window, as if erasing the night's horrors was effortless. It is crucial to note that just a week before these violent events, Christopher Harris had faced an attempted sexual assault complaint involving Justina Constant. The complaint had been dropped, but Jason Harris suggested that Christopher's visit to the G house was driven by dark intentions that ultimately remained unfulfilled. Investigators painstakingly retraced the route described by Jason Harris during his testimony. Alongside the road, in a shallow ditch, they recovered a case, a pair of Swiss shoes, and the tire iron. Forensic analysis confirmed the DNA on these items belonged to both Christopher Harris and members of the G family. On May 31, 2013, the jury delivered a damning verdict. Christopher Harris was found guilty of the brutal murder of the G family. His sentencing came on July 19, 2013, marking the beginning of a lifelong incarceration. Christopher Harris was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms. In addition, he received 30 years for the attempted murder of Tabitha, 30 years for home invasion, and 20 years for robbery, a sentence reflecting the full gravity of his crimes. The defense mounted a last-ditch effort, claiming Christopher had stumbled upon Dylan during the murders and acted in self-defense. But under the weight of evidence, this argument collapsed swiftly. In 2013, just before sentencing, Christopher and his legal team sought a retrial, which was promptly denied. Their appeals continued in 2019 with the Appellate Court of Illinois, 4th District, but that too was dismissed. Yet the story darkened further beyond the courtroom's final gavel. A former cellmate stepped forward, revealing chilling confessions Christopher Harris had made behind bars. This testimony painted a picture even more sinister than Jason Harris's account. According to this insider, when Christopher arrived at the G home, Rick G answered the door. A heated argument quickly spiraled out of control, culminating in Christopher striking Rick with the tire iron. Ruth Constant, hearing the turmoil, rushed in to intervene. Tragically, she soon became the target of Christopher's violent rage. In the midst of the chaos, Dylan Constant armed himself with a kitchen knife, desperate to defend his mother. But Christopher's brutal strength overwhelmed him. It was at this harrowing moment that Jason witnessed Dylan shatter the window as he tried to escape the nightmare. In a chilling twist, the cellmate revealed Christopher Harris showed no remorse for his actions. His only regret, he confessed, was not setting the house ablaze that night, a fire that would have erased all traces of his crime. As the evidence mounted relentlessly, Nicole G. transformed from defender to accuser, cursing Christopher for his betrayals. Meanwhile, during sentencing, Tabitha delivered an emotional statement that cut deeply into the courtroom's heart. At just 7 years old, Tabitha's words echoed with heartbreaking innocence. She spoke of shattered dreams and loss, pleading with Christopher to understand the pain he had caused by sneaking into their lives without apology. Jason Harris received a 10-year sentence, credited for time served, in exchange for his testimony against Christopher. This decision sparked fierce debate, as many questioned whether someone entangled in such heinous acts deserved leniency. There were countless moments that night when Jason could have intervened. He heard Dylan's desperate calls for help, but chose silence. Yet his testimony was pivotal in securing justice for the G family. After the trial, Jennifer Ernest, Jason's girlfriend, and her mother, Sarah Duncan, faced probation and fines for concealing evidence. Meanwhile, Tabitha found solace in the care of state troopers during her hospital stay. These guardians went beyond duty, painting her toenails, reading stories, and playing games to restore a sense of normalcy. They even celebrated her birthday, surrounding her with love amidst the darkness. Despite enduring numerous surgeries, Tabitha made a remarkable recovery. Her head injuries, tragic as they were, shielded her from the full memory of that horrific night. After a period in foster care, Tabitha was reunited with her sister Nicole, finding a loving home at last. As the community mourned the devastating loss, they dedicated a playground in memory of Austin, Dylan, and Justina Constant, a place to honor their spirits. In 2014, the show When Murder Comes to Town aired an episode exploring the G family murders. Despite interviewing residents and officers involved, the program controversially leaned toward the defense's narrative, portraying Dylan as a troubled youth capable of violence. This portrayal ignited outrage among those who had worked the case. Law enforcement officers penned an open letter, challenging the show's accuracy and defending Dylan's character as a courageous teen who fought to protect his family. Their call for truth highlighted Dylan's heroism, insisting he was more than a victim. He was a brave soul caught in an unimaginable nightmare. I stand with them. Dylan's actions deserve recognition for their courage amidst terror. The question remains, was the sentencing just, or should accomplices have faced harsher punishment? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciate these deep dives into true crime and want more stories unveiled, please like and subscribe. Thank you for joining us as we continue to bring dark truths into the light.